The Braves just had their first cold streak in months, and their bullpen and starting rotation has been decimated by injuries. But overall, things aren't that bad. It's BravesKast. Hello, welcome to the first solo episode of BravesKast. Cole is currently off trying to find out if Sixto Sanchez is a myth or reality.
Day number 9 of searching for Sixto Sanchez, and oh my god!
So instead of recording our normal length podcast today, we are going to come back at you guys next week with a full length either trade deadline preview or explainer. But a lot has happened since the All-Star break, so I decided to do a solo podcast to cover just a few key points. Starting off is the injuries. So, since we last talked, the Braves have had 4 players go on the IL. This includes Nick Anderson going on the 60-day IL, AJ Minter going on the 15-day IL, Kobe Allen going on the 60-day IL, and Sam Hilliard going on the 10-day IL. Additionally, Jesse Chavez was transferred to the 60-day IL. He is still recovering from a shin injury that he suffered back in Detroit, and reports say that he is still walking with a limp, so he's going to be another 30 days before he's probably pitching again. On the bright side, Minter is looking at a quick return. He's slated to do a rehab assignment in the next week, and Braves beat writers don't think it's going to take too many games for him to get started, maybe a game or two in Gwinnett before he's back with Atlanta. Max Fried is also coming back soon. He has done 3 rehab assignment starts, and he'll have 1 more on Wednesday in Gwinnett. The bullpen isn't looking so great, especially with 2 of the 3 back-end relievers on the shelf. I think we saw this a few times last week, especially on Tuesday against Arizona in the shootout, where the Diamondbacks ended up coming on top. I believe it was 13-12. With the trade deadline coming up in a little over a week, a lot of people are expecting the Braves to add a bullpen arm. The Braves don't have a lot of prospect depth, so people who are wanting a Josh Hader type, a big reliever, it's probably not going to happen. If you remember back to 2019 when the Braves got Chris Martin, Shane Green, and Mark Melancon, I would look for Anthopoulos to do something more like that, or what he did with Raisel Iglesias last season with Los Angeles, where he ended up acquiring a reliever who's owed a bunch of money in exchange for a graduating prospect and Jesse Chavez, who I hope we do not trade Jesse Chavez again. This year, I've seen a few people talk about Scott Barlow. I think a guy like him or another reliever that you've probably never heard of before, or, a vet who's having one of the best seasons of his life and will be a free agent at the end of the year, will be a guy who Anthopoulos targets. A transaction that did happen this past week was Travis d'Arnaud signing a 1-year extension worth $8 million with a club option worth $8 million with no buyout. D'Arnaud actually had another club option for 2024, but this pretty much just seals the deal that he will be on the team in 2024. It's kind of like the deal that Charlie Morton signed last year at the end of the season, where the Braves had a $20 million club option for 2023, but the Braves basically, and Morton just signed an extension where it was a 1-year, $20 million contract, and then added another club option for 2024. This is kind of the same deal. Travis d'Arnaud is probably the best backup catcher in baseball. He was a starter in 2022 and an all-star, but with Sean Murphy's acquisition in this past offseason, it relegated d'Arnaud to the bench. But he's not been bad. He's got a WRC plus above 110, I believe. He just homered and doubled today. And in general, he's a personality that the Braves love to have. I predict that he'll be the next manager for the team. And Alex Anthopoulos and his teammates had this to say about Travi.
Yeah, I've said it before. Even when we brought Sean Murphy in and people were speculating on trades, and I even told Travis, maybe finally people will stop speculating on trades now. He's really the glue for us in my mind. He's just so key. Obviously on the field, he's fantastic, and what he does behind the plate is fantastic. But everything he brings and what he means is just I can't say enough about him as a person. It was a no-brainer to keep him here.
And he means a lot to this team, even though he may only play once a week, twice a week.
I can firmly say that we couldn't win the World Series without Travis.
So while the off-the-field contract was being signed, the Braves were in the middle of a scuffle. This was the first cold streak the Braves have had since the end of May when they lost a series in Oakland. It was the first series the Braves had lost since losing that series in Oakland, and they ended up losing 2 in a row. So after coming back from the All-Star break, the Braves pummeled the Chicago White Sox in Game 1, winning 9-0. However, in the next 4 games, the Braves lost, including what I would think would be very winnable games. There was the Saturday game against the White Sox where Acuna hit 2 home runs, but the Braves weren't able to come back from a 6-5 game. Wasn't the best Spencer Strider start. I wouldn't say that he was terrible, but it's definitely not what you expected. I remember I actually texted Cole while the game was going on in the 3rd inning, and I was saying that this was looking to be another Spencer Strider start. Unfortunately, it wasn't. He got burned by a few long bombs, including Josh Berger's home run, Jake Berger's home run, that kind of sealed the deal for the Braves. They also had a big game, back and forth game that I missed on July 18th, that Tuesday, where the Braves had a 5-2 lead, then the Diamondbacks had an 8-5 lead. The Braves had a 11-5 or 11-8 lead or something. And then the Diamondbacks ended up coming back and winning that. I do believe it was 12-11. On Wednesday or Thursday afternoon, the Braves played the matinee. It was a Zach Gallen versus Spencer Strider start, and for 6 innings, it looked like the pitcher's duels of all pitcher's duels. Strider was having his best start probably since the start against the Marlins back in May. He had 13 strikeouts going into the 7th inning. Zach Gallen had a perfect game going into the 5th before allowing a home run. Unfortunately, things started unraveling for both pitchers. Strider came out in the 7th and immediately allowed 4 runs and 4 batters. He did not record an out in the 7th, but the Braves ended up coming back and winning, ending their 4-game losing streak. This is actually kind of shocking, but the Braves have not lost 5 consecutive games since 2017, back in September. This means that Ronald Acuna Jr., a guy who has been a 4-time All-Star, Rookie of the Year, the Braves' face of the franchise for years now, has never lost 5 consecutive games. It's kind of wild. No other team has had a streak like this in recent memory. Codify often tweets, days since the last 5-game winning streak. The Braves are thousands of days since their last 5-game losing streak. And so all in all, a cold streak that the Braves have had hasn't really been that bad. So despite losing 4 straight games, they ended up going 4-5 over the 9-game span. They won the series in Milwaukee today thanks to an Ozzie Albies 3-run home run that put them on top. They also won Game 1 of the series. So while they didn't win the series, all of the series this past week or since the All-Star break, they're still in good shape. In fact, even though they lost as many games as they did, they actually gained games in the standings because the Miami Marlins had an 8-game losing streak. The Philadelphia Phillies briefly surpassed the Marlins in the standings and then went on a 4-game losing streak of their own. At the time of recording, the Braves have an 11.5-game lead. I saw a tweet the other day that was saying that the Braves lead as the best team in baseball. So from the best record, the Braves, to the second best team in all of the Major League Baseball, is a higher game deficit than any other of the 5 first place teams in baseball right now have compared to their second team. So the Braves, 4-5 isn't what you would hope for, but they're still the best team in baseball, including in spite of all of the injuries that they've seen. A bunch of Braves bats have been cold recently. Sean Murphy, Marcell Ozuna, and Orlando Arcia a bit, and Eddie Rosario have struggled out of the gate. But one player who has not struggled in the past 9 games since the All-Star break ended is Austin Riley. Austin Riley had a 5-game home run streak going into today, which unfortunately ended, but he had actually hit 6 homers over those 5 games. Since the All-Star break ended in the 8 games before today, before an 0-for-4 performance today, Austin Riley had a 258 WRC plus. If you just move that timeline to Sunday, so a week's worth of games, it was a 347 WRC plus. On the whole, it brought his season WRC plus from 105 to 118, which is ridiculous considering that it was only 8 games or 5 games, depending on how you look at it. We've been waiting for an Austin Riley hot streak. I think Cole on this podcast has called it every week basically since we've been doing this. But this looks like one of the July hot streaks that Austin Riley has had. There is a stat out there that basically says since 27 home runs in 69 games, dating back to 2 years ago, that is an insane home run pace. I think if you hit that over the course of the year, you would be breaking Barry Bonds' record. So in the month of July, the Braves have a Barry Bonds player. And what's been most impressive about Austin Riley this year, especially in spite of his struggles with the bat up until recently, is his improved defense. So now the Braves at the hot corner have a guy who is playing league average defense for the first time in his career and is now starting to get back to his hitting norms. And just to wrap up this quick podcast, I'm gonna go through the next 5 games this next week before Cole and I speak again. The Braves are going to Boston to play 2. This is one of those weird interleague schedules where MLB really wants to force an interleague rival, even though the Braves don't have one. This year it is the Red Sox, which means unlike every other team that they're playing in baseball this year, every other American League team who they're only playing 3 games against, the Braves are playing 4 games against Boston. The Braves earlier this season played against the Red Sox in Atlanta. They split that 2-game series, and now they're going to finish up this 4-game mini rivalry series against Boston in Boston. And then they have 3 games against the Brewers. So they optioned yesterday's starter, Alan Wyans. I hope I'm saying that correctly. I did not actually see that game. They optioned him down to AAA after his start, with Max Fried having 1 more rehab appearance on Wednesday and 2 off days for the big league club. The Braves really don't need that 5th starter role. So they will be rolling with 4 starters, Michael Soroka, Spencer Strider, Bryce Elder, and Charlie Morton. As I'm editing this podcast, the Braves just announced that they're sending down Michael Soroka after claiming Yoni Chirinos off waivers from the Tampa Bay Rays. I don't know what that means for the rotation. That would mean that Fried, once he's back, Strider, Morton, Elder are in the rotation. They still need a 5th guy. I have no idea. And then they'll reassess once they play consecutive games. And they might not even have to go with the 5 starters that they have now. Alex Anthopoulos is known for doing completely unpredictable things at the trade deadline. And we'll cover that if it happens before next week's podcast, or we will try to predict things. We have not been great at predicting things often because the Braves have been winning more than we thought, but we did predict 7 of the 8 All-Stars right, so we'll see how that goes. As for the 5 games coming up this week, I'm predicting a 3-2 week against both the Sox and the Brewers.